Hello, everyone. My name is Lionel Sander from Pembroke Publishers, and thanks for joining us this evening. Before we get started, I would just like you to know that Pembroke Publishers' head office is situated upon traditional territories of the Wendat, the Anishinaabeg Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Mississaugas of Scugog, Hiawatha First Nation, Alderville First Nation, and the Métis Nation. The treaty covering this area of land in Toronto, Ontario, is collectively known as the Williams Treaties of 1923. I would also like to acknowledge and thank the WSÁNEĆ people, on whose traditional territory I live, work, and learn. The WSÁNEĆ people have lived and worked on this land since time immemorial. And I wish to recognize the significant contributions of Indigenous peoples across this land. We seek a new relationship with First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, one based in honor and deep respect. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker for this evening. I was thinking that today that if COVID was a pandemic, one of the memories that I will have is that I've been able to meet a range of authors, and three times specifically, our presenter, Larry Swartz, he's on my left, he might be on your right, depending on how the cameras are. So I've decided, Larry, that we are now COVID colleagues, because I don't think I would have ever met you any other way if it wasn't for COVID. So I've been fortunate to work several times, as I said, with Larry, and each time I'm impressed with his passion for books, for his passion for supporting teachers and getting kids to read. And for those of you that know him, know that he's an author of many books, an instructor at OISE in the University of Toronto. He's been involved both nationally and internationally in a variety of professional activities. But I think, and you'll know this if you haven't heard him speak before, by the end of the session, you'll know that his passion for reading, for children's literature, there are no one to compare with. So I am really looking forward to you having the whole hour here tonight, Larry, and being able to share your thoughts with us. So I will pass the virtual mic over to you, and we'll get started.
Thank you so much, Lionel. Okay, it's too bad we can't see your faces, everybody, but today is Lionel's birthday. So let's wish him a happy birthday virtually. And happy birthday to you, Lionel. I'm not going to ask how old you are, but what a way to spend a birthday listening to Larry. And thank you, everybody. I'm seeing some friends' names posted there. And people call me Uncle Larry, and I see my niece is just joined in, so I'm really an uncle to her. So thank you for coming. I understand that I'm contending with a hockey game tonight. Toronto and Montreal are playing. See, I'm a sports fanatic. But thanks for coming, because it's different time periods for you to watch that game. But I had to give up Coronation Street, which switched its time as well. So all that happens in a day: a hockey game, a birthday, and Coronation Street. And I'm here to chat about Better Reading Now, my new book that I really, really like. I guess I'm supposed to like it, but when you've written a book and you work hard on it and it goes through manuscript and editing, it comes to your door and you get very excited. And I don't know about other authors, but my colleagues have told me this too. The book just sits on its side, sits on your shelf, and you smile proudly at it. But in preparing for today's session, I dipped through the book again. I really like this book. And I said, I got to tell them this, or I got to show them this. But it is been a book that I've enjoyed working on. One thing I like about the book is I'm going to use the word grab bag ideas or step-by-step instructions, but the editor and the designer did a brilliant job, and things are just like 1 or 2 pages where I've given you the instructions and some tips and some resources. I'll dip into that as part of our session today. The subtitle is 50 Ready-to-Use Teaching Strategies to Engage Students, Deepen Comprehension, and Nurture a Love of Reading. Always our goal, to move kids into reading and develop their passion. But of course, we want to deepen their comprehension as we explore children's literature. I gave a copy to my sister-in-law, on the weekend. I was proud of the book, and she says, "Oh, I'll read it, Larry." I was going to say Uncle Larry, but everybody calls me Uncle Larry. And she says, "What's the book?" And I said, "It's Better Reading Now." She goes, "Better Eating Now? That's really good." So I said, "No, I am not writing a book about better eating, especially during these times, but it might be something for our friend Mary Michusi, the publisher, to think about. If you want a book about better eating, we can all contribute our favorite recipes of the past few months." About this book, when I went to school and you share your own memories or think of your own memories, it was question and answer, chapter by chapter. We took them up and we had to go through Eagle of the Ninth and many other books with that format. The creative part is we had to do a book report that had to talk about the major characters, the minor characters, and we had to do a plot graph for the book. Those are my memories of going to school, and we've certainly come a long way, I hope. And you have to think about how when you went to school, what do you remember about reading and responding books? Did you have choice in your reading? Was it something that you all read together? Did the teacher read aloud to you? So when I began teaching in 1976, I'm not going to give you my whole career, folks, but I didn't know any better. And I looked for the teacher's guide. I prepared questions on the ditto machine, but I was taking courses at the Faculty of Education. And that was a great shift really early on from colleagues like Ron Benson and Joe Phoenix, who taught me. And I really shifted my thinking about reading very, very quickly. And I hopefully brought a love of literature to my students. I know I did. And we had a school reunion in that class. I was in Caledon Central Public School. And we had a reunion just a couple of years ago. And a group of ladies, who are in their 30s or 40s now, or maybe a bit older, they came and they said, "We have to see you, Mr. Swartz." And I remember going into the room with them. I taught in the art room. I was the art teacher. And Denise went over to the shelf, goes, "Oh, Mr. Swartz, this is the shelf where you brought us books every week. I remember this shelf." And I was lucky to have the children's bookstore in Toronto. And every week, I would go every Sunday, and every week I would take in a few new novels to my class. Literature's been part of my classroom. I did an activity. My last classroom experience was grade 3, 4, 5, and I did an integrated math activity where we counted the books in my classroom. I had 1,347 books. That might not be accurate, but we did data management and probability. We counted the books in my classroom. So it's been my career. It's an expensive hobby, and my teachers get nervous. My teacher candidates, my student teachers get nervous when I tell them that. But I said, that's me. That's my career. You've got to go in with a favorite author, a favorite genre, and share that passion with them. So I'm thinking of my classrooms, and that grade 3, 4 classroom, a multi-age classroom in the south end of Peel, is where I conducted my research. Just to give you taste of my thesis, we could just talk about my thesis till 8 o'clock. But my thesis was called Text Talk Towards an Interactive Classroom Model for Encouraging, Supporting, and Promoting Literacy. So in the middle of my career, I knew, and I was still hooked on, the interactive classroom. It's rather a strange thesis. I was interested in response to literature, and I worked with reading response journals, and I was very interested in how the kids responded in writing. And in the middle of my research, like a whack in the side of my head, I moved into talk. So I set up scenarios with poetry where the teacher was involved, the teacher was not involved. Sometimes I asked questions, sometimes it was open-ended. That's my thesis in a nutshell. And the answer is they need all of the above. They need the teacher and they need the freedom. But I think we have to guide them into deepening their comprehension. And of course, my writing has been helped me synthesize, reflect on, and articulate my beliefs. And they are centered on children's literature. I see my friend Shelley Stagg Peterson is on the line from Brighton, Ontario. And we wrote a book called Good Books Matter. And she's a colleague that we shared, certainly a passion for children's literature. And she gave me great insights when she was a a judge, I'll say, for multicultural literature. And that shifted my teaching, and it worked when we were writing our book. And another book, Take Me to Your Readers, and most recently, Teaching Tough Topics, which is a book I'm rather fond of too, because I wanted to frame children's literature on teaching tough topics such as poverty, such as racism, such as gender identity, the Holocaust, bullying. And so that book is my most recent title that has framed and given me a really, I think my shift has been to looking at multicultural literature. And Shelley has helped me understand or define or broaden understanding, because in the early days of the term for me, I would think that it was books about diverse cultures, but we have to look at all kinds of multiculture, looking at their sexual identity, their class, certainly their gender, and certainly their cultural identity comes to that, religion, etc. So it broadened my understanding of multiculturalism. And when I share some titles with you, you'll see where that passion has developed. How students respond to what they read is just as important as what they read. And that's one of the premises of this book, not just giving them good books and sharing books that we want them to get excited about, but how they respond really, really matters. And there's no surprise here. You don't have to come to a Larry webinar that great books make a difference. We need to balance literature with screen time is part of today's literacy. So in the world of computers and technology, how do we have that balance? And how do we help books make a difference so we can bring the world into the classroom and take our classroom to the whole world? So there's a little rationale for great books. And literacy is now defined as more than reading words on a page. And my colleague Jennifer Arozell has certainly helped me see that with multimodal literacies and digital literacies. And it's more, and I used to use the words, and I still do, books, but I think we have to use the word text, because students read all kinds of text. It's more than the words on the page as they encounter media, computer, television, magazines, and phones in this digital world. And of course, I can't get through this little chat without mentioning virtual teaching. And how has that changed? I would certainly miss sitting around a circle or having the kids gather in front of me on the rug. But my teacher candidates have really risen to the occasion in finding books and sharing books either through YouTube or through Epic. And they know that books matter. They've heard it enough from Larry. So the virtual world has certainly been framing our recent education. Oh, that's a chance for me to plug my new book coming out in the fall, I hope. I'm handing in the manuscript on Monday. Its title, Deepening in Class and Online Learning. Worked hard on that title, but it's been an exciting project to bring better learning now, better teaching now to what's happening in the world. So that's something that's been on my head too. We need to provide strategies to guide students to make sense of what they read. And explicitly, our job is to teach kids how to respond. So there was a huge thrust on comprehension strategies. And of course, we have to teach those strategies. A little bit of overview then. How do I organize? There's 50 strategies in this book. That sometimes it was 60, and it kept going up and down. And I organize them in this format. Let's read, let's think, let's write, let's talk, let's create, let's inquire. So those are the chapter headings. And that's one way that teachers can dip if they need some writing, if they need some creating experiences, innovative experiences, or research with Inquire. Teachers can dip in by the chapters as well. So that was an organizational tool. And of course, when you're doing something like reading response journals, does it go in reading or does it go in writing? So there's the blending of categories there. Very briefly, each chapter begins with one or two quotations. So if you go through the book, and I really enjoyed doing that this morning, and yesterday, going through the quotations and choosing ones that I want to share with you about literacy from experts and authors and kids. And then I describe what is it. So I give an overview of the best practice, why use it as your learning goals, what's going to happen when we do this practice, and teaching tips. So guiding teachers and giving them suggestions if they do choose a practice. Here are some things that you might use. Then I use the title demonstration, where I take you step by step of ways to use a particular genre and invite response. So each chapter has a demonstration. And my favorite part, of course, most chapters, nearly every chapter ends with a book list to support that particular concept or theme. There's a little overview of the book. Where do these best practices come from? Obviously, my own class. I drew on my research. I drew on the best practices that I used with kids. I've been very lucky, certainly as a supervisor in classrooms and as a guest in classrooms, to observe teachers and glean what they are doing. Having chats with my nieces, Tara and Rachel, has certainly inspired me to think, what are you doing and how can I dip into your classrooms? And Rachel has invited me into her classroom. And then, of course, my teacher education program that I'm involved with, where I want to demonstrate these strategies. I get 12 weeks to talk about literacy, reading, writing, talk, spelling, media, integration. I get 12 weeks, and you got to throw in spelling there too. So my student teachers and the framework of that course has helped me build on my understandings. Many workshops and keynote presentations. And as I was able to mention, insights that I gleaned from my colleagues like Shelley, certainly professional development opportunities and professional books. David Booth's books have absolutely on my shoulder when I teach. Lucy Calkins was a whack on the side of my head when I was doing my thesis work as well. So there's a handful of strategies. Oh, I had to choose from. I made a list. I said, oh, should I tell them about this one? Oh, I got to tell them about capturing voice. No book pass is a great activity, which my friend Joan O'Callahan shared with me too. How about the picture good book contest? A great way. There's another strategy that I use with the kids to have them reading and talking. Snippets and story maps. And if you get a copy of the book, please go to Story Maps, because the example is by Samantha Stein, and she's my 6-year-old niece who did a story map for me for a picture book. This is my hat. Interviewing and role, story theater, author study, just the beginning. I'm not going to read all 50 out to you, but I was choosing what I wanted to share with you today. And that's how this book can be used as well, very easily. You can dip in and you can go into the chapter, dip in and find the strategy, and it's how to do it, ready to use. Hopefully, that was always my intention. As an educator, as a presenter, as an author, as a workshop presenter, I'm always asked, whether it's my student teachers or somebody in the hall, which books do you recommend, Larry? What are you recommending now? And how to use these books? So those 2 books has framed this particular book as well, where I choose for you and I help you suggest ways for using them. We're going to go to my favorite part, and this might take us till 9 o'clock, but we're going to end early, not to worry. But when I talk about books, I think it demonstrates and brings authenticity to some of the messages I've already shared with you. So my friend Lionel, I'm going to get my slideshow. There's the title, there's the cover, 50 ready-to-use strategies to engage students, deepen comprehension, and nurture a love of reading. Better reading now. Next. Many of you are familiar with teaching tough topics, but that one is how do I use children's literature to build a deeper understanding of social justice, equity, and diversity. And that book was released last year. Next. Okay, I'm going to start talking about books. I love this book. If I was an occasional teacher, if I was a student teacher, I was a classroom teacher, this book, I don't need a lesson plan for this book. I don't have to sing praises to Peter Reynolds because he's a great author. I love this book. The Word Collector. Let's just look at the cover there if you can see. I could do a whole lesson. Show me a word that has 2 Y's in it. Show me a word that has 3 syllables in it. How about a 1-syllable word? How about a word that has 3 vowels in it? So I did write a book called Word by Word. Sounds like I'm a busy guy, but word by word as I paid attention to vocabulary and spelling and word power. And in Better Reading Now, certainly one of the events is Word by Word. And Word Collector is a book where you just invite kids to be word collectors day by day. And sometimes you frame, I want you to collect words with double consonants like collector. And I certainly can't begin without talking about words. I love Word Collector. Next. Oh, and we're going to do a little response here. I love this book. My very favorite book in the whole wide world. My very favorite book in the whole wide world. Now, I didn't get to put this in Better Reading Now because the book recently came out, and it is by it's by Malcolm Mitchell, who was a Super Bowl hero. Now, I never knew that, but he sort of does a biography of his experiences. Now, just looking at that title, you need no lesson plan in there. My very favorite book in the whole wide world. We're going to spend a moment in the chat room if you feel comfortable. Tell Larry what's your favorite book in the whole wide world. You've only got 60 seconds in the chat room if you choose. Thanks, Meredith. Isn't that a hysterical book? It's so much fun to read, a book without pictures. I was on a mission, Denise, to get every teacher in Ontario to read Wonder, and I'm glad that's on your list because a book about kindness, you can't beat Wonder. Interesting. Interesting. I just want to see whose name that is. Can you go a little bit lower? So this, I just finished, I'm in the middle of a children's literature course, and I asked this question: what book do you remember from your past? Everything I need to know from life I learned from a piece of children's literature is the name of the assignment. And many people in that course, they talked about the Giving Tree. So I looked it up, and it's interesting. There are many articles and many experts who are really against that book because it's not about giving of self. It's about selfishness because the boy keeps taking and what is he giving back to the tree? A beautiful article in the New York Times about the Giving Tree. But of course people love it. And we're bringing our adult sensibility to it. And what are the kids getting out of it? So I knew we'd get that book up there. Rosie Revere, Codename Verity, The Great Fuzz Frenzy. Oh, I'd love to have a chat with Jackie about that one. Hate the Cat and Love the Dog. Oh my God. Free verse novels. I'd love to do a workshop on that. A very special, iconic book that brought the world of the free verse novels to it. Yay, caps for sale. Oh, I have so many too. So think about your favorite books as we're chatting. When I had to do this assignment, when I took children's literature in my grad program, the book that I remember, well, there was 2. One was Madeline. I love the Madeline series. As this little Jewish boy in downtown Toronto, why was I enamored about these little girls who were all in a line? One thing I remember, I can see it now, is that Madeline had her appendix out and she had a scar, and I always wanted to have my appendix out. And I was always intrigued, it just is my sense of humor, the Homer Price books by McCloskey. Those were the books from my past. But I went to school in the 50s, in elementary school. We certainly didn't have the range of rich literature that had exploded into our society. We didn't have a Harry Potter that changed the world of children's literature. Before I leave my very favorite book in the whole wide world, what's interesting about this book is that the character in the book is given the assignment in his class. The teacher says, I'd like everybody to bring in their book and talk. And this guy is a reluctant reader. He's totally stressed out by the assignment. He hates to read. He can't get through a book. He's bored by reading. Does anybody have that kid in their class? So he brings an interesting perspective to it, but he shines a light on the stories in his life. And as I say, this is autobiographical from Malcolm Mitchell. I use this book as tapping into prior experience, because all you have to do is look at a book title and ask the questions, what's your favorite book? So if we are looking at any book title, we could look at any of the book titles here, whether I see Shelley's book Crazy Man there, and we've got Barbara Reed's images there. It's going to keep growing. You're welcome to keep adding. And the very simplest activity, activating prior knowledge and tapping into prior experience. Does this book remind you of anything before you even read the book? So my very favorite book, what a great activity. Have kids bring in their favorite books. Whatever grade you're teaching, have kids write about the books. And just as my university students did, why is that book important to you? The next one. Your Name is a Song. There's another workshop that I use this book in personal I use this in personal narratives. Your Name is a Song. And it's a great way. I did it I recently did it in my inclusion course where we told stories about our names. So my name is Larry Swartz, not Schwartz, it's Swartz. And my father changed the name from Gwartz to Gwartz. On my birth certificate, it's Lawrence, but nobody has ever called me Lawrence. My middle name is Avram, which I didn't like growing up, but it comes from the Hebrew, and I certainly don't mind it now. Everybody has a name. Everybody has a story. So I have an activity where kids share their stories about their names or find out more about their names. Your Name is a Song is a beautiful story about a girl who goes to school and the teacher can't pronounce it and doesn't take the trouble to pronounce her name. So the girl's embarrassed and doesn't want to go back to school. Well, her mother tries to show her that her name is a song. So this is a book about esteem. Another Canadian book, I didn't make a slide of it, is by Teo Lam. Teo talks about her experiences about the troubles Teo's had with the name. Your Name is a Song is a beautiful book for personal narrative, and I'd love to hear your name stories. Next. Milo Imagines the World is a top 3 picture books. You might know the book by, oh my God, on Matt De La Pena and Christian Robinson on the street. Somebody help me with the name of the street. That won the Caldecott, won the Newbery. I love this book. I love this character. Milo's sitting on a subway. Many kids don't have subways, but we can sit in the park, as I did yesterday, and we look at the passersby. We imagine their stories. We wonder who they are. So Milo sits on the subway and draws pictures and imagines the stories behind the people that he encounters, with a very, very powerful ending, because we don't know much about Milo. I'll give you the spoiler alert. At the end, we learn that Milo is going on the subway to visit his mother, who is in prison. We never knew that story. It comes as a surprise. This is a great book about identity and inclusiveness. They might win another award. Last Stop on Market Street. I know I'd get to that title. Thank you, Diane. Next. World of Mindfulness. Pajama Press had a book last year or 2 years ago about kindness, and this is a new book where editors and illustrators from Pajama Press talk about a world of mindfulness. I use this book in my class for interactive literacy, and I use that as a connection in the book, and there's several titles about mindfulness. But let's just look at that picture. A world of mindfulness. What is this student thinking? What is this student gazing at? Well, as you open the book, it's interactive because page 1 invites students to take a deep breath and think of the world around them. So each page gives you a mindfulness activity or thought, and it's a book that uses your senses and find your calm, and something that we need to do, a world full of mindfulness. And that I use in interactive literacy. Lionel will go to the next one. I just wanted to shine a light on Shelley Murphy, another dear and this is a Pembroke title for fostering mindfulness. This is a great handbook and research that brings us insight to mindfulness education that is drawing attention in many classrooms, certainly in our university. Beautiful cover, and I love that book, Shelley, if you're online. Next. Well, my students had an assignment to do with picture books. And so I just finished teaching this course an hour ago. And I said, what was your favorite book? And out of my 20 students, 8 students did We Are Water Protectors. I have no problem with them doing that book because it is a beautiful book. This book came on my desk just before the pandemic. And I turned to my colleague and I said, this book is going to win an award. I love the cover. I love what this book represents. And it's the first time an Indigenous illustrator has won the Caldecott. Lo and behold, it did win the Caldecott Prize. So looking at the cover, and I use this one for an activity called Judging a Book by Its Cover. And so when we look at that cover, kids are sitting in front of us or staring at the screen. What does it mean to be a water protector? What is the most striking image for you on that cover? Why did the illustrator include the image of silhouetted people holding hands? How is movement depicted in this illustration? What do we learn about the central character just by examining the illustration? How are different font sizes and different fonts used? What information or story do you expect to read about in this picture book? Judging a book by its cover, I think I mentioned a few times in Better Reading Now, but I use that for sure in as a title to make predictions and activate prior experience. And I'd love to hear your answers to those questions, but that's a book that certainly deserves attention, not just because it's about water, protecting water, not just because it's nature, but Indigenous culture comes through. So it's a beautiful book. And many of my students have already used it in their classrooms. And it's an example of a picture book that can be shared with. I never put grade levels on books. Well, sometimes I do. But this is a picture book for junior, intermediate, and even secondary school students. Next. I got this by Linda Sue Park as a Newbery medalist. The title, The One Thing You'd Save. Now, here's what I love about this cover, because it's given me my lesson plan here. This is a book about making connections. Just ask the question, what is one thing you'd save? Here's the opening sentence. Turn the next slide, please. Imagine your home is on fire. You're allowed one thing. Your family and pets are safe, so don't worry about them. Well, this is a gentle book that has been on Linda Sue Park's shelf for many years. She didn't know whether it should be a novel or a picture book, but she puts it in poetic form. So each of the kids in a class, what we would call a junior classroom, thinks about what's important in their lives. Is it a photograph? Is it a signed autograph? Is it their cell phone? And so this is an invitation for kids in the class at any age to answer that question. We've done that in many capacities when talking about possessions and having kids tell stories. But what I would push it further with older kids to have them use the poetic format. She uses a 3-line format, not haiku. And I would push that further. But what a great community thing to have students share objects from their lives, bring in pictures, tell stories, write stories, and perhaps bring those objects in as artifacts. And that all came from books. I'm always looking for books that gives me, that's how I choose, one of the ways I choose my books. And it's the author. Linda Sue Park is not going to fail me. Next. Eyes That Kiss in Corners. What a beautiful, beautiful 2021 book. Eyes That Kiss in this corner. This girl is, I'm going to use the word ashamed. That's a pretty tough word. But she doesn't like her eyes because they're different from everybody else's. And she's an Asian girl and she hasn't adjusted to her differences. And so she's embarrassed by it. Her mother tries to help her see the beauty from within and the beauty outside. An Asian identity. How many kids will identify with this book? How many kids will learn from this book and think about their own identities? So one reason we share good books is we think about ourselves, but we learn about each other. And Eyes That Kiss in the Corners is a beautiful picture book. I'm not sure if it was 2021. I think I bought it early in the year. Beautiful book there. Next. I love this book. Canadian. I Talk Like a River. I think I put this book 3 times in Better Reading Now. It's Jordan Scott's story about being intimidated or, again, embarrassed by his stuttering when he was a young kid. And again, he's embarrassed by it. That's the word I'll use tonight. And his father takes him to the river and uses the river as a metaphor. Beautiful illustration. Sydney Smith, Canadian illustrator, who's won many awards. For me, this is Sydney Smith's best book. He's always done a great job. This is a beautiful book, and bringing the autobiography together with the illustrations. I'd like to give this book to Mr. Biden, President Biden, because he experienced stuttering. And how about Anderson Cooper? And he grew up with stuttering, and now he's on CNN. This is a beautiful book to share with kids. I put this book in my Teaching Tough Topics on Physical and Mental Challenges. And incidentally, this book won an award for best book that deals with differences and what they call special needs. So that won an award last year. It deserved it. Next. Outside Inside. Well, this book was my recent purchase from Amazon. Maybe I shouldn't say that I got a book from Amazon, but I read a review of this book in Lu Yan Pham, and this is a book about being stuck inside. And she's looking outside the window at the world that is empty outside because people are stuck inside. This is intentionally written about the pandemic and helping the kids deal with lockdown experiences. Beautiful illustrations. And she's won an award for a Caldecott illustration. So there's a book that's certainly of now times, but also universal times. As the next book shows, you're going to see many books, fiction and picture books that deal with this. This book last year, and the next one, Lionel, Outside In, Deborah Underwood. Now, this book came out, I think I bought it in March or April. She didn't write this book for the pandemic, but this is about a girl who's staring outside the window, and she is outside and she's inside looking at the world outside and appreciating nature and appreciating her circumstances. This was a runner-up for the Caldecott. The illustrations are just amazing. So you can see that watercolor abstract. And one more. Next one, this comes from a Pajama Press. I actually have 2 copies of this book. Outside You Notice. This is about a girl who notices natures. I love this book. It's a nonfiction because she notices the seeds. She notices the plants. And in very text boxes throughout the book, it helps kids notice nature and be observant, not only in this book, but the world outside. I think I have a couple more. So you'll see lots about outside and inside. And then again, If You Come to Earth. I think you heard me talk about this one by Sophie Black. You got to buy this book. Every teacher can use it. Here's the first sentence in this book. Next. Dear visitor from outer space, if you come to Earth, here's what you need to know. It's a beautiful book as Sophie Blackhall takes us through what do we know about friends? What do we know about homes? What do we know about trees? What do we know about clothing? What about dogs? So I invited my students to fill in the blanks and write a letter. Dear visitor from outer space, here's something you need to know. And so people talked about books, they talked about television, they talked about Netflix, but many of them talked about COVID-19. How would you explain to somebody from outer space what COVID-19 is? So that's a great writing activity for you for tomorrow morning. If you don't have the book, there's the sentence for you. And another thing about this book is, well, two things. It's translated en français. Si tu viens à la terre. I don't know if I got my pronouns right. So it is translated in French, and it inspires a letter writing. And why I wanted to shine a light on this one, I put it in the strategies for quick writes, because you just give them that sentence stem and give them the quick write experience where they respond and fill in those sentences. An easy lesson plan. I like easy lesson plans. Next, The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse is one of my my very special books. It was my top 3. I think I gave 12 copies away last year for Hanukkah and Christmas. I used this book for predicting. So if we look at the cover, what do you predict this story will be about? Well, it's about the boy, the mole, the fox, and the horse. But what do you think? How will these characters be connected? Let's look at the illustration. What do you know about each of these characters just by looking from the drawing? Do you think this is a real or fictional story? Why? This is a story about kindness. How do you think kindness will play a story? So before we even open the pages, and it is a book about kindness, invite kids to make predictions, which is another comprehension strategy. I think that finishes off my picture books. Okay, I'm going to race through these. Oh, I'm always aware of time. I said I was going to run out of time. Okay, now get really excited, okay? Because I love talking about novels. Alan Gratz is known, well, he's written many books set in wartime. And Refugee, a few years ago, in every workshop, I demanded that teachers read Refugee to their classes, and many teachers have. In my literacy class, where they had to read a novel, this was voted their favorite. They gave it 10 out of 10, Refugee. Lo and behold, his 2021 title is called Ground Zero, a novel of 9/11. I'm getting goosebumps when I talk about this book. It's going to be in classrooms in the fall. It should be in the classrooms. It's available now. The story is alternating voices. We are taken to 9/11, where this boy goes to the Twin Towers with his father, who works in the kitchen. And lo and behold, the walls come crumbling down, and he's separated from his father. So the book takes us through that tension. Certainly your heart's in your mouth, really suspenseful, as Alan Gratz knows how to make that a reality that the students in our classrooms may be aware of. This brings that reality to focus, and it is through a fictional experience. Here's where the book is brilliant. Every other chapter is taking us to 9/11, September 2020. We are in Afghanistan. We are in a small community, Afghanistan, and we're looking at the aftermath of 9/11 from the view of a young girl who's living in Afghanistan. I love this book. I hope kids read it. Rachel's online here, but I gave it to her class to read, and I think it's passing from kid to kid in a grade 7-8 class. Certainly will be on the top of my titles for the year. Next, Flying Over Water. My colleague Maria Martella from Tin Lids in her webinar recently recommended this book. I love this book. Interesting, it's alternating voices as well. It's about a refugee girl from Iran, and she's moved into a home in America with her family. And her father and her family's trying to adjust to circumstances there. And of course, she hears the statements, go back to where you came from. Tough sentences, and you hear that in several novels as well. Well, she makes friends with this girl who's a champion swimmer, but she has her own problems because she has panic attacks. So these two girls bond with each other, and they fly over water. There's a metaphor for you. A beautiful book about the refugee experience. I found myself really intrigued. There's many, many books about refugee experience, both fiction, nonfiction, and picture books. Next. When Stars Are Scattered. Oh, I love this book. I love this book. Larry, you say that about, the kids used to say, Mr. Swartz, you say that about all of them. Well, for different reasons. This book, a National Book Award finalist, Victoria Jameson, it's a graphic book. And this takes the kids right into a refugee camp. A boy and his brother are refugees from Syria, and it describes their life and turmoil and dreams and wishes while they are, I'll say, stuck in that camp. Spoiler alert, the boy and his brother come out of the refugee camp experience, and Omar Mohammed co-wrote this book with Victoria Jameson. She did a brilliant job with graphic books, and it's a biographical graphic story, When Stars Are Scattered. I highly recommend it. Next. Prairie Lotus, Linda Sue Park. Again, this is an immigrant experience. The setting is the Dakotas in 1890, maybe 1860. I'm not great with details tonight, but if you've ever enjoyed The Little House on the Prairies, Linda Sue Park has taken this Asian girl into a Dakota territory. And of course, her and her father are not welcome in the community. So the immigration experience comes through very strongly in Prairie Lotus. Next. Becoming Muhammad Ali. If you read my top 10 list, this is, I love this book. But James Patterson doesn't need any promotion from me. He's one of the top, we might be the very top. Certainly he's written adult novels, but for kids, he stands at the very top as well. Certainly the top three. And Kwame Alexander, the best, whenever I say the most, it leaves names out, but he certainly shines a light on poetry from an African-American identity. He won the Caldecott Award for his novels about basketball, free verse novels. And this is a biography. This tells the story of Muhammad Ali when he was Cassius Clay. So it talks about segregation. It talks about him growing up. A brilliant thing about this book, it's a feature that I like, is two voices again. So James Patterson does it in prose, and Kwame Alexander does it in free verse. It's a rich biographical book, Becoming Muhammad Ali. Next. The Good War. I finished this book last week. Wow, is this a tough book? Give me a grade 7-8 class. These are kids, and the teacher forms a club, an extracurricular club where kids play video games. So these kids they divide themselves in two teams, and they're sort of rival teams. Well, the Good War, the setting for this the games is World War II. So playing the games, the kids learn about World War II. They learn about the Holocaust. They learn about Nazis, and many of the kids were unaware of it. And one of the tough things in this book was one of the boys goes online to find out more about it, and he gets embroiled with somebody online who is a white supremacist who invites him to a rally. And the boy goes to the rally. So as the book goes on, it's not just a book about video games, tough issues for kids to think about, not only the power of the internet, but learning about history. I'm still thinking about that book. The Good War, almost done here. Next. Fabulous Ed Watson, Canadian book, Basil Sylvester. Some of you know Mike Kevin Sylvester. Here's what's interesting about this book. Basil Sylvester is non-binary, and the character Ed Watson is a non-binary character. There have been many books about gender fluidity. This book takes us on a road trip adventure, a wild road trip adventure to find a long lost mystery book. And so Zed Watson, his best friend, and his friend's sister go on a journey across America. And Kevin Sylvester and his son, Basil co-wrote this book with great illustrations. A wild adventure. Next. How can I not mention Eric Walters in a book about novels? Don't Stand Close to Me. He wrote this book in March 2020, and it was produced in 6 weeks. It was an ebook, and Eric's brilliant at that. He brings current events and issues to life, and he had this book produced as an ebook over the summer. It's now and it's available in paperback. And this is about kids living through the pandemic and how are they going to cope. So this book was the setting of this book is 2020. Where have we come since then? And how will kids learn and identify with it, make connections to that? What's interesting about this book, I think the kids are in an intermediate class, but the reading level for me is grade 4, 5 to 6. And his autobiographical book, The King of Jam Sandwiches, Eric Walters is prolific. He's a great author. He's a Canadian hero because he's written over 120 books. The King of Jam Sandwiches is based on Eric Walters' life, where he lived with his father and in poverty, and his father, I'll use the word, abandons him. Well, the student in this book is academically very proficient, and he keeps the secret hidden that he's living on his own because he doesn't want to go to a foster home. Based on true experiences, hooray for Eric Walters. We're almost finished. Front Desk, people heard me talk about this. Front Desk was a great read by Kelly Yang, and it's about Chinese immigrants in the 1995, in the middle of the 1990s, and they come to America, and they're trying to find a place to belong. They're trying to find play a job. So they end up working in a motel, and the girl in this book, she is sitting at the front desk. I love the characters in this book. I love that it helped us think about the immigration experience. And then she did a sequel called 3 Keys, which recently came out. And in this one, these are the girl's best friend, the girl from Front Desk, her best friend, the family is going to be sent back to Latin America. I don't remember the country, but because they are undocumented citizens. So this takes us through off the pages of what's in the news these days and helps kids understand those circumstances in 3 Keys. I think I've got 2 more books that I'll finish. Wishtree, every teacher. This needs no introduction for me. I love Wishtree. It's if you're looking for a read aloud for grade 3, 4, 5, this is the book. Catherine Applegate is one of my favorite authors. And this is a book told from the point of view of the tree that brings the community together, that brings the animal together. And once a year, people make wishes on the tree. What wish would you make on the tree? You can see that as an obvious response activity where kids can decorate a tree. But in this book, a Muslim family moves in, and the girl is trying to adjust to the community. She's trying to find friends. And another spoiler alert, but in the middle of this novel, carved into the tree was the word Leave, leave. And the girl has to walk by this tree with this message staring at her, leave. And again, it's a message about go back to where you came from. So this book works on many levels. It's a book about nature. It's a book about community. It's a book about belonging. And the last book, I want to buy everybody a copy of this book. Jewel Parker's Road, Ghost Boys. On page 1, a black boy is shot by a white policeman. The black boy has a toy gun, and so the policeman shoots him. The boy goes up to heaven, and so he meets other black boys who were abused by policemen and others who were abused in history. Emmett Till he meets up there in heaven, and these black boys, these ghost boys, look down in heaven. And the character in this book looks down on earth while this white policeman is going through trial. So many of the books that I have in my collection, I have a huge box on the side here by my desk. How do we help kids make sense of Black Lives Matter? How do we make sense of what's happening in the news? So this book about police force and about Afro-American identity. One of my students who I actually taught her in grade 5, and she sent me a message. She goes, Mr. Swartz, and it says, you can call me Larry now. She said, my class cried and cried when I finished this book. Thank you for recommending it. Read it on your own, share it with the class. It's an important book. I think that's all the books that I'm going to share with you. I'm going to finish off with Lionel, go next slide. It is the last books, but so here's the quotes that I chose. You can't make people read any more than you can make them love, make them dream. You can't do that. Mind you can always try. That's been my mission in life, our mission. I know that the kids that I meet with, and I do my darn best to help them read, and become passionate readers. They're not always going to be readers for life. But for the time that we spend together, we can always try. Better Than Life by Daniel Pennock. And J.K. Rowling, if you don't like to read, you haven't found the right book. It's the right book, the right strategy, the right instruction, the right teacher that can turn kids off to books or onto books. And the last quote, let us remember one book, one child, and one teacher can change the world. So out of my 50 plus quotations, those are the ones I chose. And I think I have another slide there. A professional read, the hot book. Get it hot off the press, folks. Shifting the Ballast. Those of you are involved with the wars about reading and teaching phonics or not teaching phonics or whatever. This is by Jan Birkins and Carrie Yates, and this is a hot book, Shifting the Balance, 6 Ways to Bring the Science of Reading into the Balanced Literacy Classroom. So I did want to mention a professional read that's come across my desk as well. I think that is the last of the slides, Lionel. Better reading now. One more. You are going to get a handout with all my book titles. You are welcome to email me at any time. This is on the handout. Please know about my website, larryswartz.ca, where you can once a month dip into what Larry recommends. My newest posting will be about middle years novels. And sometimes I do postings about grown-up reads. But this information, and if you want more suggestions, please dip into that for some recommendations. That will be on the handout. And at the end of this, in a few minutes, Lionel will give you instruction about how to get that particular handout. Okay, back to me now. Well, that was a whirlwind, but my goal today was to dip you into my book, show you some basic strategies. I actually like this book, and I applaud my editor. David Kilgore did a brilliant job, and the designer, to make this very easy to read. Dip into the chapters, dip into the strategies, find a book that you want to use, and the book can be your friend. Reading better is a lifelong process. It's our responsibility, challenge, and joy to make reading come alive for our students. So that finishes off my introduction in my book. Reading better is a lifelong process. It is our responsibility, challenge, and to make reading come alive for our students by introducing them to picture books, novels, poetry, and nonfiction selections. It's my mission in life, and I thank you for listening to me sharing my passion, because in the end, students are agents of their own learning and their reading lives, but we can guide and we can lead them to read, read, read. Let us remember, one book, one pencil, one child, one teacher can change the world. Thank you, Malala. Thank you very much, Lionel. And thank you, everybody, for listening to Uncle Larry, Dr. Larry, tonight. Happy reading.
Thank you, Larry. That was great. It's I just had this vision of you wearing a shirt that says "Read, read, read," as you go into every class. So I wish we had another hour, because I'd love to dig a little bit deeper into where that passion comes from. And I know you work with educators and previously with kids, but it's had such a far-reaching impact on so many people. It's we will do another one, and we're going to go a little bit deeper into where that passion comes from, because thank you so much for it. As Larry mentioned, folks, there is a handout. If you notice at the top of your chat bar, there's a handout tab. If you click on there, you can download it. When you get the email with the recording, I'll also include directions on how to access it there. Pembroke Publishers also has set up a little offer for folks, and you can click on the blue button on your screen, and it'll take you to the Pembroke Publishers website, and you can get a $5 discount on hopefully one of Larry's books, just using the code BRN for Better Reading Now 21. And so that's available for you there if you would like to take advantage of that. So Larry, I'm just looking at all the thank yous. Fabulous. Thank you, Dr. Larry. I didn't see Uncle Larry come back there, but I'm pretty sure it's in there as well. So lots of thank you. And comments like I would listen to you again, which I'm sure will happen very soon. So on behalf of all of us, Larry, thank you so much. And I know you had a busy day with teaching and everything, and you found more in there for another hour with us to share your excitement. So thank you. And thanks to everyone else. And we look forward to seeing you next time at our Pembroke Publishers webinar. So have a good evening.